Good morning and welcome to a new painting. This is from a photo that I took at Linwood Gardens when I was there in May of 2022 to visit a large tree peony garden as well as a formal Italian garden and just beautiful, beautiful property. And it was a sunny day in springtime. The redbud trees were in bloom, and everything was so pretty. And it just so happened this man came riding by me on a bicycle going down this lane. And I thought, what a cute painting that would be. And I clicked the photo of him and just thought it was so pretty with the redbud trees and whatnot. I took my original photo into Photoshop and made a few adjustments. I took out some extraneous branches in the upper left corner that didn't need to be there. And I also used a filter with other software that I have called Topaz Labs, and kind of created more of an impressionistic glow to the photograph, which I really like. Um, so you can see, hopefully, you can see that glow of yellow is around the trees and where the sun is hitting the right side of this tree and here. The sun-struck dappled light on the roadway and in the grass. I really like the glow of all of that. And so to try to capture that glow in the painting, I'm going to start first by applying some yellow into all these glowing areas. I'm going to start first with Winsor Newton transparent yellow. And I'm going to moisten the area that I want to apply the yellow to first with a wet brush. I'll start here on the left. I want to put the water just where I want the yellow color. I don't want to drag it off up into the sky, because when I put blue in for the sky, I don't want to get a green sky by having the yellow there. So I've moistened around the edge of this tree. And now I'm picking up the transparent yellow. And I'm going to put that down toward the outside edge. There's little spots where it pokes through. Okay, rinsing, and now I'm going to go on to the top part or outside edge of this large tree. I moistened my, I rinsed out my brush, and I'm now pulling some of this yellow down into other parts of the tree. The leaves are kind of in clumps. They're like in oval shaped clumps that are darker on the bottom, lighter on the top, but surrounded by this yellow. So that's what I'm trying to capture at this point. Quite a bit of yellow with this tree here. Now on the ground here underneath these trees, there's quite a glow. And I'm going to be sure that I'm pulling my brush horizontally because I want to convey how the land is. So by pulling my brush strokes the way that the land goes like this, rather than up and down, helps the ground to sit down. Now for me, the focal point of this whole painting is the man riding the bicycle. And it kind of was a neat effect that ahead of him is this very dark shadowed area from the trees, and then a very bright sunstruck area of grass, which I'm going to put in here. So the contrast between the very dark shadows that will come and this very bright sunstruck area is what will draw a person's eye into this. Just pulling some of the yellow so that it gets lighter. it goes back. And then we have all this dappled light along this roadway and along the edge of the grass. I was actually in the wrong spot for that. Just moistening it and tapping with a paper towel. This is the spot that I should have been in. If we catch it early, we can just, if we make a mistake, just moisten with a damp brush and then push with a paper towel, and that will pull up pigment, especially this transparent yellow, because it doesn't seem to be a staining pigment, so it came up pretty easily. Okay. There's some very sunstruck areas in the grass here on the side. And along the edge of the path. A little bit too much there. Okay. Okay, there's a wooden wall structure here behind these trees. And some of that is sunstruck as well. And so you hopefully have the idea of what it is I'm doing by placing all of this yellow in here. So I still need to go around the rest of the trees and down the edges of the tree trunks here on the right side and in some of this grass. And I'll be back after I finish that. Okay, this layer has completely dried now, and I'm going to go over some of the areas with a little bit stronger yellow. This is Cad Yellow Light by Schmeeke Corridum. It just happens to be the brand that I have. It doesn't mean you have to use that brand. So along the edges, I'm just strengthening the yellow color. I'm on dry paper. I rinsed the brush and now I'm coming back in to soften that just by pulling at the bottom edge of the color. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now we just have to let that dry or dry it with a hair dryer. And I just want to say I'm not taping down my paper. I'm painting all the way to the edge because so many times when I tape down my paper, I tape off too much of the paper, and then when I finish the painting and pull the tape off, I haven't painted far enough towards the edge of the paper to go underneath the mat that'll go around it, and I end up having to come back in and try to match up all these colors all the way around the edge, and that is not fun to do. So that's why I haven't taped this down. It doesn't mean that I don't ever tape down, but for this particular painting, I'm not going to. Okay, that's still cool. I have to let this dry here before I can put the sky in, but that's going to be next. So I'll be back as soon as this dries. Now that our second layer of yellow has dried, I would like to put in the sky. And I'm going to wet the sky first. I'm turning my piece upside down so I can get right into the edge of the yellow, right up to the edge. The sky is it's a lovely blue sky, but not really dark. It's darkest right down here over the edge of the trees, and it fades up to a very light blue, and along the very top it's a slight pink cast up where the clouds are. It may not be realistic, but I think it looks pretty. So I'm going to try to do it the way it came out in the photo. The colors that I'm going to use for the blue sky is Daniel Smith Verditer Blue and I'm going to use Holbein Bright Rose for the very, very light pink and at the top of the sky. This will be extremely diluted color. And I'm not going to worry about tree holes right now because it's too much to try to keep it wet and figure out where I'm going and all of that. So we're going to start with this bigger section right here that I've wet first, right up to this tree. Okay, so that looks nice and wet. I'm going to add quite a bit of water to my Verditer Blue. I don't want it dark. I can always make it darker. Okay, it's darkest right along down here. Till we get to about the top of this tree. And you can see the color is getting lighter just because I have not picked up more paint and I keep walking my brush into the wet paper. So by default, the color is getting lighter. Now I'm going to tip my paper. Show you this way. I'm tipping my paper because I want the color to run up towards the top. And that helps to gradate it. Note that I still have not picked up more paint. I'm still using the very first load. Okay, now I'm going to rinse that out. I have to work quickly here because I don't want the paper to dry, and I'm going to use extremely diluted Holbein Bright Rose. You probably can't barely see that. I'm going to tip the paper up right now and try to encourage the pink to run down just a little bit. I'm tapping the paper to help it move. Let's see if you can see that now. It's extremely light. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up or not, but I don't want this to look like I'm painting roses up in the sky. It's really just a tint. And then after this dries, I can evaluate if I need to go back and darken it. And I may need to do that, but I don't want to rush it just yet. And put too much on. I'm going to leave that area so that I don't get into it with water. And I'm just trying to think what I'm going to work on next here while that dries. I think maybe we could put some of the road color in. This is actually like a dirt sort of road. It's a tan color. It's a tan color where it is really bright in the sun, and then there's a bit of like a brownish gray back in here. Okay, so we need tan. All right. To make my tan color, I'm going to start with Winsor Newton Quinacridone Gold, and it is sort of a gold color. And to that, I'm going to add some Schminky Sap Green. And then I'm going to pick up Holbein Holbein Brown Madder. So now I've mixed 3 colors together. I'm looking for a tan color. It sort of appears that I've gotten it. Let's put some down and see what it looks like on the paper. Okay, so coming away from these really bright areas would be some streaks of the tan color. Notice my strokes are horizontal. And as I go forward towards the man on the bicycle, the color needs to get lighter. So I'm going to add more water to lighten the color, make it a softer transition from the yellow. Coming right up next to the bicycle. This little strip of sunstruck road up here. Now I can also use a dry brush technique here, which will give me more texture in the road. So to do that, I'm on dry paper, I've picked up color in my brush, and if I put my brush right down sideways, like this, and just let it grab at the texture of the paper, that's how I can create texture, rather than painting with the tip of my brush like this. I'm going sideways with my brush, and that helps give you texture in a painting. I'm ultimately going to have to fill this in much darker because most of this is in shadow, but I just wanted to demonstrate that texture-y technique for you. It's very effective. And there's a cast shadow, which I am ultimately going to darken. Being cast by the bicycle rider. Back here on the road, some of the light spots appear even to have somewhat of a redder tone, so I'm just going to pick up a little bit more of the brown matter and add that to my mix. Brown matter actually looks red. I've run out of paint. I need to mix up some more. So that was quinacridone gold, sap green, brown matter. that is very gold. I want to calm that down with some blue. Oops. Picked up too much blue right there. I swiped through a pile of blue on my palette. Didn't mean to do that. And we need to get a darker, cooler, grayish color for the shadows in the road. I'm going to use Winsor Newton Permanent Magenta. Plus Schminky Ultramarine Blue. And that's going to give me kind of a lavender color, which I'm now going to put on top of some of these areas. This is the dappled shadows being cast by all these trees. The shadow carries right over onto the grass. Of course, I have to put green in the grass. Wish I had before I did this, but oh well. We'll fix it. thing, strengthen the shadow being cast by the bicycle rider. I'm going to lighten up my color as I come forward up here because the contrast just isn't that great this far ahead. But there is a shadow crossing the path where the bicycler is going just before he gets to that very sunny area. I want to pull some of this color up into here so it's not just a strip of plain yellow. And I'm basically just using a wet brush to pull some paint over these dappled areas so there isn't such stark contrast. There has to be some, but I think I got a little bit too much. So I'm just trying to soften this a little bit so it doesn't look like a patchwork quilt, which is how it's looking to me right now. But as we go along, we'll tone some of this down further. I think that's kind of a good start. Anyway, so I'm going to let that dry before I come back and do anything more.